financial management. I'll come to the slide a bit later. Let me tell you first the importance of this subject. Like we did in accounting, we first justified that there was a need to study this subject for your corporate successful life. Same is true about financial management also. It is one of the important subjects. Using its concept and the techniques that you will learn, you will take several financial decisions. To start with, let me give you some idea about the most successful businessmen of the world. At times used to be the richest person in the world. You all know whom I am referring to. Yes, can you name who was the richest person a few years ago? Okay, any other name? The most successful investor?
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett, correct. You're all right, Warren Buffett. Whatever he has said about the financial management is something that is worth reading. He used to address a letter to all his CEOs and also to the shareholders, especially when he used to refer to letters every year before annual general meeting. He used to address the CEOs as well as the shareholders. So he used to give a lot of advices, so many available on the net, several. Common thing in all those advices, in all those sermons or lectures or letters, whatever you call them, used to be that the executive should always aim at maximizing the wealth of shareholder. Maximizing the wealth of shareholder. Today, if their wealth is worth rupees 100, at the end of one financial year, this should be 100 plus, 110, 120. There are some sophisticated ways in which we adjust these figures. We make certain calculations that you will learn in the course of time. Making provisions for inflation, provision for several things, but the core issue was that the wealth should be maximized. What the executives do in between two financial years, first let us say January to 31st March, he was not much concerned about that. What he was concerned that at the end of accounting year, the wealth of shareholders should be maximized, and that he has proved it by several means. If we look at the compound annual growth, average compound annual growth of the past 55 years. Why I am saying 55 years? Because he is into business for 55 years. He started somewhere in 1964, and if we compare 2021, I have got the data of 2020 right now in front of me. So if you take these 55 years, his average compound growth of the world, you can say, was 23,000% of these 55 years, 23,000%. While in his case, it was more than 28 lakh%. Just see the difference between 28 lakh and 23,000, even 100 times more than 100 times compared to the world. So this is how he has been successful, and he gives some real tips about the financial management. So a person who gives much credit of his success to financial management speaks something. It means the subject has a value. One must understand thoroughly. One must understand the intricacies, how to deal with the subject, because it has been proved beyond doubt and quoted by a person who undoubtedly is the world's smartest investor the world has ever produced, Warren Buffett. I'll give you certain assignments, not now, later on, when I'll ask you to go through the letters that he wrote over a period of time, his quotable quotes, and whatever are the learnings from that we will see at a later date. Again, giving you one more example, not really related to the subject of economics or financial management, but purely from the uh, political science. From the political science. How many of you have an idea about the book called India Wins Freedom? India Wins Freedom. Have you heard the name of this book?
Yes,
Any-
sir.
Okay. Who has authored this book?
I think Nehru.
Okay. Any other answer?
Abul Kalam Azad.
Abul Kalam Azad.
Yes, you are right. Abul Kalam Azad. Abul Kalam Azad authored this book. At the time of publication of the book, he, put up a condition that these 30 pages of the book will be released after 30 years of my death. In 1988, those pages were placed in the, archives of Calcutta, National Archives of Calcutta, and were released. In those pages, at one of the places, it has been mentioned that when the interim government was in place in 1946, Congress as well as Muslim League, both parties were interested in having the important portfolio. Which one is the most prized portfolio when it comes to ministries? Which one is the most important or prized?
Finance.
Sorry,
Home Ministry.
Finance.
Home Ministry. Usually it is considered as Home Ministry. So both were interested in having this ministry. Somehow one of the intelligent persons in Muslim League got his people convinced that you part away this Home Ministry to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and in exchange go for finance. The solution was amicably acceptable to both the parties. After some time, what they started realizing that whatever proposal, good or bad, used to be initiated, especially from home, it was somehow scuttled there. It was somehow stopped for one objection or the other at Ministry of Finance. Then only they realized how important the Ministry of Finance equally is. And some people, some political pundits also argue that apart from several reasons of partition, this was also one of them. We are not going into discussing the political part of it, but all I'm trying to explain to you is the importance of this subject that you will be learning in the coming 40-45 sessions. Like this, I can go on and explain to you with several examples why is it important to have a fairly good idea about the subject, in what ways this subject, knowledge of this subject will be helpful to you in taking decisions, not only in the company, not only in the corporate sector, but also in your personal life, in your individual life. What I have planned for the day is that I'll explain to you. I'll give you overall, this background or overall idea about this subject and how one unit is related to other, not exactly the way accounting used to be, but still that strong relationship is not there. Little bit of a relationship you may found between two or among these 5 units. So today's session, I will be concentrating on your syllabus and how do we propose to take this syllabus forward. One important thing that I may share with you right at this stage is that there are 5 units of this syllabus. Professor Khalid Azam Sahab will discuss with you first 2 units. First 2 units he will discuss with all MBA classes, MBA Main, IB, MHA and Islamic Banking and Finance. All students combined, he will discuss first and second unit. Once these 2 units are over, I'll start discussing with you unit 3rd and 4th. Khalid Sahab normally takes longer than planned, so he may be able to complete these 2 units in roughly 20 sessions or maybe a bit more. So after he is over with these 20 sessions, I'll start engaging your classes for unit 3rd and unit 4th. fifth unit, either we will share part of it, or he may engage fully, or I may engage fully. It depends on the time that we have at our disposal and other circumstances. But the division of these first 4 units is there right now. First 2 he will engage, second 2 I'll engage. I am giving you the brief introduction of the entire course today. He was supposed to take, but he will start from Monday onward. Now, a brief about the entire course. First of all the 5 units I'll explain in one line. It is all about maximizing the wealth of shareholders. Every single decision that we shall take in these 5 units, let there be 50 topics, let there be 100 topics, let there be infinite number of topics or subject or words. While dealing with every single topic, the main objective would be maximization of wealth of shareholders. That we have drawn from what Warren Buffett used to say, and he still states that what will be the objective of decision making? Objective of decision making would be to maximize the wealth of shareholders. And how is wealth of shareholders maximized? I explained a bit before also. If the value of a share was rupees 100 in the beginning, at the end it should be, just can any one of you tell me the answer? For example, you are a shareholder. When you started the accounting year, your company in which you are holding a share, when a company started the accounting year, value of your share was 100. At the end of accounting year, how much should it be? Any answer from any one of you? Come on.
More than 100? Something.
So should be more than 100.
By more than, there has to be a particular number. What number do you have in mind?
More than the inflation rate.
At least
More than
150.
inflation rate. Okay. Tell me a number.
So 150.
150. Okay. Fine. No issue. Any other answer?
110.
110. Okay. Any other answer? 110 and 150 or? Yes, or?
125.
125. Just one more answer and then I'll start giving you the logic. Somebody told 110, 120, 125 and 150. Okay. You yourself will come up with an answer. I'm sure there is no one who would say that it should be less than 100. It is natural. So 110, 120. Now let me ask one more question. One of you who said that he expects the value of a share at the end of accounting period as 110. All right. Suppose the value is not 110, it is 109. What would you do? Any answer? Okay. Let me ask from someone else. Somebody said 125. And at the end of accounting period, it is not 125, it is 122. What will be your next course of action? Will you keep silent, you will take some action, or you will take no action? Somebody who said 125. Yes. What will be your reaction?
So we can use the reserves.
We can use the
Reserves.
No. The value shown in the market was 122, not 125. My question is, what will you do? Will you take some action or no?
So we will go through some other options in which we get more profit.
Yes, we will go to some. Yes, carry on. Your answer is correct. We will go to some
other options in which we get more profit.
Yes. How much more? At least 125, because your expectation was 125. Okay. Part of the answer is given that you as a shareholder will go for some other option where the return is 125. So what would you do? In practice, what you will do? You will sell. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who will buy? Who will buy?
Some other investor.
Who will be that investor?
So who is ready to buy at 122?
Who is satisfied for something less than 125? It is usual, it is natural. So someone of you in the class who was happy with 120 will buy this share. Maybe somebody who was happy with 110 will buy this share. Same goes for somebody who was expecting 150 and company gave a result of only 145, company's share price 145, he will sell. And who will buy? Somebody who was interested to have a return of 125. That means in the world as a whole, different people have different expectations. So buyers will meet the seller and seller will meet the buyer, and the process will continue as it is continuing in the world today. Now come back to the theory, or come back to the statement with which we started: maximization of shareholders' wealth. Maximization of shareholders' wealth. Now when I go to each and every topic of each unit, we can always relate this objective. So we will start with the first unit of your course, which has introduction and scope of the course. There will be conventional meaning and definition, how people have defined, etc., etc. Then you will study what are the functions of financial management, what are accounting functions, what are treasury functions, what are taxation. There are several functions which a finance manager performs. So what are the functions? What precautions are to be taken in performing each one of those functions? It will be all theoretical in nature, just a text, nothing to do with calculating or performing some numerical calculations. Then we will talk about the valuation. Now when we talk about financial management, so naturally investment is a part of it, that we invest money. Valuation, how do we value a share which is being sold in the market right now? Is it overvalued, undervalued? How do we calculate the return that we are getting on it? What are various models using which we can calculate, or we can value a share being sold in the market or a debenture being sold in the market, etc., etc. All these things are part of the subject valuation. I have briefly mentioned, there may be a bit more topics there, but broadly these will be the one around which the discussion of the unit concerned will take place. Then risk and return. These are the two things which are very commonly found in financial management, because whenever we talk about wealth maximization, we talk about return, and whenever we talk about return, it is always associated with the risk. It is always associated with the risk. So how to balance between the two? At what calculated? How to calculate risk? How to calculate return? How to strike a balance between the two? Various methods of calculating return, various methods of calculating or quantifying risk will be discussed under these heading. There is a strong relationship between the two, risk and return. Then we will discuss about the time value of money, that is the present value, as well as a future value. You all have fairly good idea, 100% idea about the future value of money. Future value of money is nothing but compound interest or simple interest. Present value is just opposite to that concept. So we will see what do we mean by the word present value, how do we calculate it, what is its rationale, and why is it important to know the concept of present value in the financial management. Again, I'll tell you that these two things, present value and future value. Present value and future value are the two most important, very important concepts which we need to know. Only then we can take a prudent, a correct financial decision. If we are ignoring the concept of present value, we cannot take any financial decision correctly. For example, right now, what is the price of petrol?
101.
100.
Okay, let us say 100 rupees per liter. Just recall the time period. You might have accompanied your parents, your father, to a petrol pump when he used to buy. what was the price when you were young, maybe 6-7 years old. The moment you could recall, maybe 2 years kid will not recall how much father was paying, but maybe when you were 8 years or 10 years, you could recall how much your father used to buy when he was in your age.
Around 50.
Around 50.
50.
Okay. 50, 60. Okay. What lowest price of petrol can you recall? Lowest price of petrol if you can recall. Sorry?
60, sir.
60 around.
Around 60. Okay. Let us say 50, 60, whatever. So what has happened between the age of when you saw your father buying petrol and you bought petrol, the petrol prices have become doubled. Can I say like this? It has been doubled. How long did it take to get it doubled? How many years?
7 to 8 years.
20.
Roughly 10 years.
Let us say 15 years, 20 years. 15 would be a good number, assuming your age and your that point in time. Let's say 15. In 15 years, the price of petrol have been doubled. Assuming that your assertion of buying it at rupees 50 when you were young of like this is true. Under this assumption, it has become doubled in 15 years. Has it become expensive really or not?
Yes, sir.
The hue and cry people are making, has it really become expensive or not? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
If I say no, that means both of us can have our argument. You say yes. So let me justify with my no. Then you try to justify with your yes. 15 years ago, my salary was 10,000. My salary now is 30,000. So by what amount my salary has gone up?
3 times.
3 times. By what this margin or by what value the price of petrol has gone up? 2 times.
2 times.
Is it cheap or it is expensive?
Expensive.
Cheap.
It's still expensive.
Cheap, sir.
It is cheap now because my income has gone thrice. My income has gone up thrice, but the prices have gone up only twice. Isn't it economical? That means we need to take it. The question why did I ask you was that we need to take a decision only after converting the values either into future values or into present value. The values in themselves, individual value has no effect as such unless this is converted and brought to either the present value or taken to the future value. All the financial decisions will be made taking these into considerations. You may find several things very, very economical 20 years ago, 10, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 100 years ago, but in reality they may not be cheap, they may not be economical. Depends on the conversion that we do. At times you may say things were very cheap when my father used to work, my great grandfather was getting a salary of rupees 10, like this, no? So all we need to know about the valuation of this money, that we shall spend more time how to quantify the real value of money from 30 years to today, or from today to 100 years from now, and vice versa. We'll talk about too much about it when we actually come to the discussion of this point. In the second unit, we will talk about the working capital management. When we have to manage finances, so first we have decided how we go about valuation, which unit of money after conversion shall we take into account. Then we will split into 4 major decisions. We investment decisions, financing decisions, and dividend decisions. Each unit will be a part of one or the other. Working capital was explained to you in accounting class also. You have cash, you have debtors, you have stock, etc., etc. These are all your component of working capital. Each component will be managed separately. First, we will talk about the theories of working capital. Then we will see what are the factors which determines the amount of working capital. I have written two words here, determinants and determination. So determinants are the factors based on which amount of working capital is needed, and determination means actual calculation. How much working capital does an organization need? If you have more than required, it is a loss proposition. If you have less than required, again you are carrying a risk. Therefore, we need to know how to determine the exact amount of working capital. How much amount should a company needs or should a company maintain? Then individual components will also be studied. How to manage cash properly, how to manage receivable properly, how to manage inventories properly. I'll give you just example of one of these. The rest will automatically be based on the same. Let us take how to manage inventories. If you have more inventory than desired, is it good to have more inventories than desired one? Suppose your inventory should be approximately, you should have 1000 units in your stock. What is wrong if you have 2000 units? You will spend lot of money. Your money will be blocked. Your more storage will be required. Pilferage is possible. Things may go out of fashion. There will be several losses that you may incur if you hold more than what you desire. Similarly, there will be a cost associated with holding less inventory that you should hold. You may go out of stock, you may lose an order, and likewise there are several things. Details will be discussed when you reach this unit. So that means we should maintain optimum level of inventory. How do we maintain? What formula can we use to maintain that level? Like this, there will be management of each component of working capital, be it inventory, be it receivables, that is debtors, be it cash, and so on and so forth. Then we have capital budgeting decisions. These decisions, if you look at the working capital, it is the current situation, short-term decisions. When you go for capital budgeting, we are talking about the capital expenditure, the expenditure that company makes in the project which have long life, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. So how do we take such decisions which have long lasting effect on the wealth maximization of a company? Can you think of any example of long-term decision? What could be an example of long-term decision?
Purchase of fixed assets.
Purchases of fixtures, purchases of machinery, okay. Investment in some new product, construction of a factory shed for a new product, construction of a building for a new product that we wish to, or expansion. Which could be the example of a project having the longest life, largest life? You all use that facility. You all have used. See the construction of roads, construction of highways. You have toll. Why do they have a toll? How do they fix the prices of toll? Should it be 100 rupees per car, 80 rupees per motorcycle, or 1000 rupees for a bus? How do they arrive at these, prices? They calculate that the road will survive for 30 years, 40 years. And in these 30 years, this much of investment we have made today. By charging so much with so many vehicles, we will recover our money plus the desired profit. So like this, we will study capital budgeting. We will take capital budgeting decisions to evaluate a project, long life project. There are data requirements, that how the data is to be arranged. Then there are various methods which we use for the appraisal, like payback period method or internal rate of return method. There are several of them. So we shall see how do we analyze a data? How do we, first of all, arrange the data? How do we decide about a data based on which we shall make these calculations? And once we have decided about the data, then we apply various methods which are approved one, which are recommended one, and see out of so many options available with us, which option should be exercised so that the wealth of shareholder is maximized. Because each decision, as I said in the beginning of yours, will result in either maximization of shareholders' wealth or erosion of their wealth. So any decision which is likely to erode the wealth of shareholders will be avoided. A decision which will result in the maximization of shareholders' wealth will be accepted. So this is how we shall do in capital budgeting. So there will be methods of project appraisal. We will know in details about each method, about its advantages, about its advantages. We will evaluate that method and accordingly take a decision. Then we will go for the fourth unit, capital structure and cost of capital. If you look at the third unit, the third unit belongs to this investment decision. We are investing our money, the money that we raised, we are investing this. And capital structure suggests the sources from which we should raise money. That is financing decisions. How to finance a project, how to finance our company, how to raise a finance. So it will be covered under fourth unit, capital structure, a decision. Like, you can start or you can invest in a project by borrowing money. You can invest in a project by partly using borrowed money and partly using the already existing capital or your reserve, your surplus, your retained earning. You can have a combination of the two in various ratios, 1:9, 9:1, 3:7, 7:3, any combination you can have. So under financing decision, capital structure and cost of capital, we shall see what are various theories of cost of capital, and with respect to each theory, what are the implications, and then we will study the cost of each component of capital. Because if it costs you more, your profit will be less. A simple approach: if cost is more, revenue remain the same, there will be less profit. If cost is less, revenue remaining the same, there will be more profit. So each type of capital cost the company in terms of interest that it pays, in terms of dividend that it pays to the shareholders. So one tries to minimize the cost. So we shall calculate we shall study how to calculate the cost of debt, that is cost of debenture, how to calculate the cost of preferred shares, how to calculate the cost of equity shares, how to calculate the cost of retained earning, and how to calculate the weighted average cost of capital. WACC stands for weighted average cost of capital. So all these 4 or 5 types of capital cost calculation will be seen. All these will be based on numerics. You will have a data. Based on data, you will make certain calculation. You will arrive at an answer and interpret that answer. Just one second. Interpret that answer. Then we will calculate weighted average cost of capital. Then again, theoretically, there will be some hypothesis. I think if you recall, we discussed, I don't know if I discussed in accounting, hypothesis. What does famous authors talk about the calculation of cost of capital? What do they recommend when it comes to capital structure? Should we go for only debt? Should we go only for equity? Should we have a combination? And is it in reality, does it matter or it does not matter? It is purely an academic exercise, etc., etc. That all will be part of our discussion on hypothesis. Then we have fifth unit or last unit, in which we will talk about the dividend decisions. Now, after the company has declared the profit, another decision that lies before the company: should it pay dividend or it should not? First thing, if it decides to pay, how much should it pay? If it has earned a profit of rupees 100, should it pay entire 100 rupees as dividend and retain 0? Should it pay 10 and retain 90, or should it retain 90 and pay 10, any combination from 0 to 100. What are the pros and cons of each of the decisions? What will happen if more dividend is paid? What will happen to the company if less dividend is paid? In what way the share price will move? In what way this company will, in what way the share price will move by making more or less a payment. So this is the a thing that we will discuss under dividend decision. You will have various models of making a dividend and paying dividend and their impact on the valuation of a company, like Walter's model, Gordon's, many we'll discuss them more when we reach at that particular level or that particular stage. You will again be given, you will again have the numerical exercise, you will have certain set of data, and at various permutations and combinations you will find out what is happening to the share price of a company if more or less a dividend is being paid. So in case of dividend decision, this will be our approach. And once again, we shall study what do the researchers or what do the celebrated authors or accomplished authors talk about dividend. What do they suggest? According to them, are these decisions relevant or these decisions are not relevant? Like they talk about from the practical point of view. What I was talking about, the various models and substituting values in those models and arriving at the share price, was from the academic point of view. Like paying dividend, for example, if we pay for a particular company more dividend and we conclude their share price will go up. So this is based on our calculation. But increase in share price, or for that matter even decrease also, may not be a function of paying more or less dividend alone. I'll repeat. See, theoretically, if we substitute values in a formula and we get an answer, and that answer suggests that doing so the share price of company will increase, means wealth of shareholder will be maximized. So this is based on our calculations, based on academic exercise. When we talk about this MM hypothesis, or when we talk about certain other things, so they say that this is not the only factor responsible for increase or decrease, increase or fall in the share price. So what are those considerations that we shall talk about under these things? Then there are certain special topics. For example, leasing, or could be factoring services, or could be some other things which are common these days, based on which the alternate methods of finances are discussed. So leasing, etc., will also be a part of our discussion when it comes to the what you call when we talk about the fifth unit. So especially it will be devoted to the dividend decisions, but it will also include certain special topics. One or two I have listed here. The rest we shall add as we go along and see the timings, how much time is left for the coverage of course. In this way, your 5 units will be covered. 2 I will take, that is unit number 3 and 4th, and 1st and 2nd Khalisa will start on Monday at usual 5:50, and then I will take over once he completes his part. We had an option to take individual classes. For example, he takes one set of 60 students and I take another set of 60 students. So what we saw in this experiment earlier, maybe 3-4 years ago, that different teaching styles are there, different things are taught by different teachers in different way. So it becomes difficult for the student. Just give me a minute, let me close the door. Some disturbance outside. So in that approach, there were some problems that we realized that different people get, adopt different approaches. It's natural, you would have seen. And therefore, a better way out that we discussed and we practiced has been that part of the unit is taken for the entire students, because syllabus is common by one teacher and part is taken by another. So at least you will have, every one of you would have read 2 units by the same teacher, another 2 or 3 units by the same teacher. So there'll be a parity when it comes to such things. So therefore, this approach to us proved to be better. That is why we will continue using this approach in this session also. So this is what I had to say. Now, if you have any question with respect to whatever I have discussed so far, you may seek a clarification on that. Yes. Any question?
The recommended books.
Yes. Yes.
The recommended books, sir.
Okay.
So what are the recommended
I'll
books?
explain to you. There are primarily 3 books which you will find in the seminar. One is by Financial Management by Pandey. His initials are I.M. Pandey, P-A-N-D-E-Y, Pandey. Another book by Khan and Jain, Financial Management, Theory and Practice by Khan and Jain, Y.M. Khan, P.K. Jain. This is also a book by, then third one you will find among the Indian authors by Prasanna Chandra. Prasanna Chandra is a former professor of IIM Bangalore. I.M. Pandey is from IIM Ahmedabad, and Khan and Jain both are from Delhi University. So these 3 books are equally good. Lot of numericals in Khan and Jain, theory as well as good numericals in Pandey also. And by Prasanna Chandra, he covers the industry-oriented aspects also in his book. All the books have been repeatedly published, several reprints, several editions. There could be 13th edition of Pandey perhaps, similarly 13th, 14th edition of Prasanna Chandra. For Khan and Jain also I have seen 10th reprint. So with this you can see the popularity of these books by these 3 authors. Earlier on there were books by S.C. Kuchhal, and there, but right now as on date, perhaps one of these books you can take from book bank, or you can buy from the market. Even a second-hand book will do. Any of the books you can read. It is desired that if you can go through each topic in all these 3 books. It is recommended because each offers a separate perspective, a different perspective, and your understanding will further improve. So you can go through any of these books, or preferably all. When the syllabus will be shared by Khalid Sahab, you will find under the head, at the end of syllabus, the name of these books and the publishers. Yes. Any other question? Do you have any other thing to ask with respect to the entire syllabus that I have discussed with you?
Sir, in this subject, will we study about investing in stock market?
No, that you will study in another subject called investment management. That you will be joining in case you go for finance as a specialization. But with respect to stock exchange or investing in a stock, the procedural part, etc., if you mean that, in this subject you will study the valuation of a share. Is the share underpriced or overpriced? Should you or you should not buy the share, and why? This will be the part of 4th unit, cost of capital and capital structure. But let me give you a piece of advice here. What all we study, either accounting or in financial management, most of it is academic in nature. The real consideration are somehow different, and those considerations are such which cannot be put included in the syllabus, or which cannot be taught also, because they are so dynamic in nature, not dynamic in nature rather, these are other than the academic exercise. For example, we can only say that price of a share is subject to A, B, C, D. One of them is political consideration. Now, when somebody is investing towards the end of a term of a government, so one never know what kind of government will come up in the next term. What will be the policies of the government? We know the policies of current government. If it continues, we know that this will be the likely scenario. But how much sure we are that this government will continue when it comes to central government, maybe state government? Because each type of government has its own orientation and accordingly supports the investment policies. To give you an example, what happened to the investment? If you talk about 2-3 years ago, that Tata promised in West Bengal. After some time, they had to walk out because of the government that was. Similarly, had there been a different type of government there, the decision would have been different. So I mean, what I was talking about, that political considerations are there, economic considerations are there, world situation is there. Within the world situation, within, for example, America, who wins the election? Depending on that, the investment scenario changes and the share price fluctuates. Not in America. What is happening in America is affecting India. What is happening in world is affecting India. What is happening in India is affecting our state. What is happening in our state, investment decisions will be changed. And when these change, the entire scenario of the pricing changes. Like this, there are several considerations which off the record can only be discussed, which cannot be placed. But anyhow, theoretical foundation will be provided. Any other question? Has everybody signed the attendance this roll number? Mentioned the roll number?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if not, that you can leave the meeting now because you need to join another class, and Khalisa will talk about this subject with the first unit tomorrow. If everybody has signed, I can close the meeting.